senior Hollywood correspondent for Vanity Fair. Please welcome Anthony Bresnikan.
It's so nice to see a full house. Thank you for joining us today for this screening of Fargo Season 5, the first episode. Let's hear it again for that. I've loved the Fargo series from the beginning. This season, I think, is especially strong, and my wife and I couldn't wait for the next episodes after watching one. We got most of the way through the season, and it's really intense, as you know. And I just want to watch the next one. And then I realized, wait, I'm the press. I have press screeners. Finish the whole season in one night. We stayed up till like 3 in the morning watching it. But I couldn't wait then for the actual run to end, so I could interview the creator, Hawley, about it, and talk to him and the story, and share that with all the other fans. We get to do that again here live, but with additional members of the cast. So I'm going to begin by welcoming executive producer Littlefield. Lorraine Lyon, Jennifer Jason Leigh. Sheriff Roy Tillman would love your vote. Jon Hamm. Creator, executive producer, writer, and director, Hawley. And we have a final guest. She is in, I believe, South Africa, right? Shooting a film, Juno Temple, who played Dorothy Lion. Hi, Juno.
Hi.
What time is it there?
It is currently 1:02 a.m.
Thank you for staying up and for joining us to talk about Fargo Season 5. No, I want to start with you. We call it Season 5. Do you think of the seasons, do they have sort of subtitles in your mind? Like, what would you call this one if it did?
Well, it's funny because FX always talks about installments. There's a different word every time we do it for what it is. I don't think of them as seasons because obviously they're not necessarily connected or sequential in any way. I just think of it as it's year 5, and it's what I like about the show is that you could watch it in any order, and you could throw the movie in there as well. And there's a lot of people who haven't seen the film now; they've seen the show and not the film. To them, I say, watch the movie, please. It's every time it's a different thing.
This season especially takes some cues from the movie. You have variations on some of those themes. So you'll see a guy in a mask come up to a pane of glass, and the story of the kidnapping of a wife is obviously the core of this season. Tell me about taking those familiar notes and adjusting them, playing a different song with them.
Yeah, it's something that we started doing early on, which is to take a moment that's familiar to you from the movie Fargo or from another Coen Brothers movie. Somebody walks somebody else out into the woods and they're begging for their life, and you think, oh, it's Miller's Crossing. And then something else happens than what you've seen. And so what's happening in your mind is you're both remembering something and discovering something at the same time. And I always found that really interesting. It's not an experience that I have much, where it's a way that you can set expectations, and I always try to make something that's unexpected. So it's another tool that we use.
Warren, you've been with the show since its inception. What are some of the particular challenges of this season of Fargo to produce?
Puppets.
I have been in the sandbox with Noah for over 12 years. And in April, we hit the 10th anniversary of the premiere of the first Fargo. So it's been kind of a wonderful journey. Noah had no gray whatsoever when we started. And I think this season, we're dealing with a storyline that has at its core spousal abuse. Pretty heavy stuff. And so what Noah was playing with was, can that be a part of our world of Fargo? Can we expand who we are and where we live is in a world of intense drama and also wonderful humor? And so can we be authentic? Can we tell that story? And can we kind of expand our brand a little bit to play in this world? Noah loves to test us all, and I think that fuels all of us. And the ultimate test was an episode with puppets. Can we deal with this story material and all of it with these quite brilliant actors, but then also get into the heart and soul of that through puppets? And we were scared to death. And yet it worked.
Noah, why did you decide to do it that way? The scene, and do you guys all know the scene in Puppet Bed? So we're depicting some pretty horrific violence. The puppets help mute that in a way or make it a little more tolerable. What was the reason for telling that part of the story in that way?
Well, I'm always very sensitive to the idea that I don't want to create fresh trauma, right? Fresh trauma for actors or for viewers. So much of what we see in a movie or a show that shows racism has to engage in racism, right, in order to show it. And I really didn't want to abuse the audience. Everyone loves Juno's character. We know that what happened to her was horrific, right? There's a scene where Roy goes and, assaults her, right? And I'm with him for the whole way for that walk up. And then when he goes in and the door closes, we hear the abuse, but we don't see it. Because you don't need to see it, right? You know what's going on. And then we go inside when it becomes a fight. And then once she's fighting back and it's a fight, then I feel like we should watch it. The thing with the puppets was I knew that I wanted to tell the story of what she'd been through, but I didn't want to abuse poor Juno just for the edification of the audience. And also, it's the Coen brothers' tone. And what I've learned is that you can only go so far in each direction. You can't do farce, otherwise the drama doesn't work. And you can't go so far in the dramatic direction that it nullifies the comedy, because then you just seem tone deaf. And so, it occurred to me that, when children are abused, there's often a doll, and they say, show me on the doll where he hurt you, right? And that started that idea of, well, what if we did it as a puppet show? And then the director, Sylvain White, we went through the design of the puppets. I was interested in the marionettes. I wanted to see their puppets and know their puppets. He was like, what if the mouths moved? What if we puppet them from below? I was like, the more realistic it is, it's even worse. The whole point is, puppets are how we tell stories to children, right? And that there's something about putting it into the puppet show format that I think allows the audience to actually watch it, right? And not to be doing this.
Turns it into a memory as well, as opposed to something that's actually...
Yeah, and it's her story that she's telling, and that's why, Juno, originally I was going to have the actors voice their parts, but Juno had the idea to voice all of them, which I thought was really brilliant.
So, Juno, Noah just said he didn't want to, abuse you during the making of this show. Is that true? Because I watched this show. I feel like you go through quite a bit. What was the toughest part?
It did, but a lot of biscuit whipping, actually. That was what that that one sequence early on where, yeah, I gotta make Scotty her pancakes, and my one arm, I was like, wow, yeah, mamas can whip. But, no, I mean, I think each day brought a challenge, but also each day brought an absolute kind of magic wonder too. And I think, you know, coming on to year 5 of Fargo, you've seen all these incredible chapters before, and you know you can trust the people you're working with, and I think Noah being at the helm of that is somewhat nerve-wracking, but also truly a kind of game changer. If you've got the mind behind all the brilliant decisions, and you just got to ask the questions, and then trust in the leap, right? And I think also the cast that I mean, was in awe of, and then figuring out moments and scenes with all the people that we got to, you know, create this chapter with was absolutely monumental, because I learned more about my character throughout scenes playing out when the camera was rolling in ways that I haven't experienced before actually on a job. And I think that was something that just felt exciting to come to work every day, even when it was long days and hard hours and all of that. It was like, also, you know, I learned that I can run. and I think, yeah, it didn't feel like any of it was that. It felt like it was an incredible challenge that I just, yeah, wanted to not disappoint every day, really.
I think the one commonality between all the different installments of Fargo is that the whole show is like kind of like an ice bath for the soul. Like it brings clarity. It looks like we just lost Juno. Is she okay? See
Am I here?
Okay, she can hear us. But it brings.
Sorry.
It's like poltergeist. Like Juno, go into the light.
That would be so scary.
But the show really brings the viewer a sense of clarity about what's right and what's wrong. There are characters who walk a gray zone, but there are also many characters that are clearly in the wrong, know they're in the wrong, don't care. And Juno's character, your character Dawn, is such a warm heart of this series, and if a viewer cares so much about her, I cared so much about her. I wanted to see her escape and do well, and she's so tough and so resilient despite being petite and small, and she's so innovative. Juno, can you tell me about bringing that warmth to this character and making her so resilient and yet relatable?
And then, yeah, I mean, I think obviously size doesn't matter, right? We're just going to start with that. That's but I think a big part of bringing Dot to life that Noah and I talked about a lot actually was the duality that she had of this incredible ability to survive and to fight, to get out of the situation, to survive it. But also, she's a mother, she's a nurturer, and that's also very much part of her core. And so in these moments where she's being more feral and more frightening and showing her ability to be able to fight and, you know, in moments really hurt people, and that finding just a moment where you could throw in her nurture and her instinct to kind of take care of people was something that was really exciting to discover, actually. And we found this moment early on in the gas station sequence with the tourniquet, with this beat where she's been, you know, scrappy and she's escaped this really horrific situation, and she takes a moment to help Whitfar with this tourniquet, and it was a moment that almost felt like time slowed for a second. But then she doesn't have to have the validation from him afterwards. It was something that she genuinely just wanted to pause and help and then go back to her baby, you know? And I think at the core of the whole journey from when we meet her at the beginning of year 5 is that home and getting back to her daughter and to her husband are the most important part of her day. And because she's got to make sure that Scotty gets her breakfast. And I think whenever you kind of felt lost in a kind of fight scene or a scrappy moment, just always remembering and picturing Scotty and Wayne, played by the extraordinary Sienna and David, who they became like a safe word for me throughout the shoot. And I think they became like a real home. And I'm so grateful for that, because then as we go into the kind of second half of this year, suddenly I found myself not around them, and so creating this real kind of close-knit family initially was something that was really important for the rest of the shoot for me, and I really missed them, you know, and I did think about them a lot, and that was something that felt absolutely integral to Dot, and understanding who she is as a woman, which is, yeah, she's a survivor and she's a true nurturer. And what an amazing, amazing woman she turned out to be, you know?
I agree. And you're back, you're screaming back. Let's see you again.
That's good. I felt like they're wearing the clothes and
I think sometimes as a viewer, the more a character cares about others, the more you care about them. Did you see that as integral to her character at all?
Yeah, I always
Oh my.
want to create relationships in places that the audience feels safe from that, whether it's Patrick Wilson and Kristen Milioti, or Ewan and Mary, you know, or Dot and Wayne. You know, there's this you know, axiom that conflict equals drama, and I think that's true, but I don't think that means you have to have conflict everywhere, right? I think it's important to give people a place to be, where people that they like, and then of course if those people are in danger, then from people like Jon Hamm, then we were.
Well, Roy.
All right. From Roy.
No, you said that the character of Roy was really inspired by John's natural personality.
Yes, the things that he says to me over dinner I can't repeat. No.
But John, isn't the opposite true for Roy? Here's this character who physically looks like the type of character that we're told is father knows best. He's like a combination of John Wayne and Optimus Prime. Like he's big and strong, and yet he doesn't. I would say he doesn't care about anybody. He uses even the people that you would think he loves the most until they're not of use to him, and then discards them. What's the key to creating that sense of cruelty in this man?
Unfortunately, there's not a single person I can think of in the current climate that would remind anybody of anything like that. So I had to go in all of them. No, you're right, and it's a cautionary tale. Obviously, you know, this is the person who and I think it's made this way on purpose, that looks at and represents completely, looks a certain way, and then is, unfortunately, the opposite of that. You're exactly right in identifying it. It's the ogre under the bridge, except it's in the clothes of somebody who's respectable, and has way too much power and way too little checks on that power. Here we are in a time where that seems to resonate even more clearly. And it was important, I think, for the story, for the audience, for everybody, that these two parallel tracks were running from Juno's character and my character were running very parallel for a long time, which is just ratchets up the tension until those trains eventually the tracks cross and they smash into each other, with obviously, as most of you have probably seen, very violent results. And big thing we talked about too in sort of resolving that conflict was that this guy cannot win. If this guy wins, that says something very bad and dark about us. And he doesn't win. And it's a good thing that he doesn't win. Because that is behavior that is deplorable and should not be rewarded. It's unsustainable. It's sustainable if you're the master of your domain in a very small part of South Dakota for a little while, but it's not sustainable for long.
I think that to me, the character, he gets away with these things just by force of will, like he's willing to do things that other people can't fathom. And I think that's that often the way we are as individuals, it shapes how we assume other people are. If you're a fundamentally good person, you
Well, you either sign on for the social contract or you don't,
Yeah,
right? So
he
I
doesn't
think,
sign.
exactly, there's a moment, and there's a couple moments where you go, well, he's not gonna shoot, oh shit, he shot that guy. Dead, not in the arm. And that's a huge break in the social contract. Most of us, when we sit down and want to talk about something or argue about something, think, he probably's not gonna shoot me dead. And that's on the table for Roy. And that's crazy. That's not how we should live in a society. And I think that's why he was brought down.
But I think that's also what's so satisfying in the scenes you have with Jennifer is you know, who puts who in their place, right?
Yeah. We anticipated the next question, which was I'd love to talk about your scenes together. You have two really strong ones where he comes to your home and thinks he's gonna bulldoze this little lady, and another when he's behind bars and still thinks he's on top, and she indicates that she's got plans for him. Tell me about that first scene.
Well, I have to say that the scenes were so much fun to play with Jon. The dialogue is so delicious, and it was like, for Lorraine, it was almost like going into like a warm bath. It was like, this is her happy place. Does it take?
They were also really long scenes, which you don't really see much anymore in television. They were 6- and 7-page scenes, which were, you know, these little playlets that we got to do. And I, like most of you, have been watching Jennifer do work at the very top of her craft. And it's a great pleasure to get to work at that, for that length of time on something this well thought out and constructed, and then to play with it. And so it was a warm bath for Roy too, is all I'm trying to say. So
Roy likes his warm bath.
I like a bath. Roy can go bath.
That's like a bath. Such a funny scene.
But she has a I mean she's not the beating heart of the series. She has some cold aspects to her too, and I think you could.
She has a chilliness, but she also has a wit, and I do think at the beginning when I read the first episode, it was like, ooh, a villain. How delicious, how fun. And then as it went on, it's like, no, she's not at all. Like, she actually does have a very big heart, and maybe how she parents isn't ideal. But Wayne is a really good guy.
He's a sweet man. So you did something right.
She did something right. And I think when she really discovers who Dot is, at first she's horrified because she's dealing with an animal and not, she really thinks that Dot is beneath her son and is really just using her family. And then they have that scene together and she realizes she pegged her wrong. And that doesn't happen for Lorraine a lot. Lorraine can sum someone up in about 3 seconds and she's almost always right. This might be one of the first times where she's not right. And that scene was so much fun, and so it really sets a fire under Lorraine because she realizes she can't trust her at all. And she can't trust her own sense of summing someone up and figuring out who they are. But then when she sort of sees everything that Dot went through, she cares enormously. And I think we also discover that Lorraine probably had to go through a lot in her life. And she can sort of see her mirror image in Dot in a way that she never appreciated or understood before. And I think you want Lorraine in your corner. She would be a good person to have in your corner if you needed someone in your corner, I think.
Well, unlike Roy, she has honor, I think, and she believes in rules.
Yeah, very much
That's
so.
it would be one of the big differences between them.
Yeah, she's also a lot smarter than he is. As written by no.
And Roy is.
But if you also think about, I mean, the show is always very much an exploration of capitalism on some level. And if you think about how capitalism works and who works for who in this situation, it's never her, the billionaire, working for the rancher. It's always the rancher working for the billionaire. And he just can't see that, you know?
Juno, I'd love to hear your thoughts on working those early scenes with Jennifer where Lorraine is keeping Dot at arm's length and looking down at her versus when they finally have their sort of, I don't know, unification moment or moment of clarity together. It's like playing the difference of those two different moments.
I mean, again, just what a thing to get to play with Jennifer Jason Leigh at all. I mean, I've truly, from an actor standpoint, one of the greatest 6 months of my life getting to do that. But the starting scene, I remember the first scene we shot with Jennifer was actually the dinner scene I think it's in the first episode. And I remember feeling, wow, this is two jungle cats, wild cats, that are really sizing each other up. She was extraordinarily feline with her judgment that felt really intoxicating and really scary. And then getting to kind of play with the idea of not being allowed to be a lion, because obviously she wasn't interested in Dot genuinely being a part of the lion pride. And so having to kind of play it out from a different cat perspective, which ultimately turns out to be like a tiger. And we had a lot of fun with playing with those early scenes of being kind of really catty with each other and picking and choosing the moments to really kind of let your claws and hair stand up on end. But that, I mean, it really kind of is fun if you create a level of trust between two people, right? And I think that was something that was really special too for me, is getting to hang out and spend time with Jennifer in a way that we felt really safe, getting to go to work and play with each other like that. And then, you know, the conversation did start. Wow, it would be really lovely if there is a moment where Lorraine thaws and has a nice moment with Dot, and maybe they could be family. And when that sequence came of having the phone call with Lorraine, where she finally calls Dot her daughter, that for me was one of those kind of magic moments of filming where you forget the camera's rolling, and it felt really, really moving and really powerful, and gave Dot so much strength to get out of the situation that she's in, because I think she so deeply has wanted a mother for her whole life that was able to be a mother to her. And so it's funny how things like that, the things that you want the most come to you at the strangest moments in your life. And I thought this was such a great exploration of that side of being human.
Jennifer, do you have any?
But so Juno is so extraordinarily giving, and the day that she shot the images that I see later on of the abuse that she went through, she wouldn't see me. I was kept very far away. I had no idea what it would look like, anything. She just wanted it to be very, very real for me. And that made the scene for me. Because the pictures, the makeup artist did a brilliant job, but Juno, it felt so real, and I've seen photos like that. And there was I didn't feel there was any acting, it was just very naked, very brutal, and it really brought it home to me, and it was such a moving thing for me that Juno went to that extreme for me. I mean, we spent so much time together, and I did love her so much, so I was so excited just to have that scene where I do get to hug her, and when I do get to call her my child. Because all through it, Noah wrote all these times where it's like, you're not my daughter, you know, so, so clear. And we just have this incredible bond. Yeah, so it's nice to be able to play that. And Juno's just so fierce, so you can believe it. I kind of believe every single moment. When you think she's just using my son, I believe that. And when it was just so easy as Lorraine to have all the assumptions and then have them all blown away.
Another hallmark of Fargo is the dialect and the voices of the actors. And I'd like to talk to you three about how you found the voice for your character. And I'll start with you, Jennifer. Noah told me that he told you, I think she comes from somewhere else. She isn't a
Like
native.
where?
What did you take from that, or how did you find?
Well, we talked a lot about William F. Buckley for attitude and politics and all the rest of it. And so I think she's self-created a little bit certainly with her vocal patterns. And it's a way to, it's like if you've ever met someone who's, I don't know, some Brits will, not Juno, but there's a certain like British accent that's very intimidating, you know? And I think when I watched William F. Buckley on, oh my God, why is the name of that? His show is like slipping my mind right now. Firing Line, yes. Oh my God, I watched probably 80 episodes of Firing Line. It's intimidating, you know, and it's his vocal patterns, it's the register, it's also how he looks down at everyone. Even if he's sunken low in the chair, he still like raises his head. So there was that, and just like, yeah, so that's where we went with that, which is very, very different than the sound of Fargo. But yeah, it was sort of a crazy risk.
Juno, how about you? The voice of Dot, where did it come from? What did you study to get that musical Midwestern American accent?
Liz Hamilton, the dialect coach of all dialect coaches, she started working with me about 6 weeks before I got to Calgary, and it was one of those moments where the apartment I was living in London with my partner, it was Keely Jones, Juno, and the birth of Dot all happening at once. So it was a lot of different voices in the apartment. But I think that accent is so intimidating when you start, because it feels so alien and it feels kind of like a joke, but it's really not, actually, you know. And I think I remember Liz telling me that the two prostitutes in the movie Fargo are the actual two women in the whole movie that are actually from Minnesota. I believe they're from Big Bear Lake, actually. And so when you listen to them and you think, oh, if I'm trying to be over the top, you're not. But when you figure out the accent and it clicks, suddenly it's this magic moment, and I wanted to do it everywhere. So I remember when we got to the airport, I was actually testing out in the airport. And I tried to stay in the accent too when we were filming, because that if you don't start being self-conscious, then even if you slip up during a take, you don't ruin the whole take for everybody. And it was such an important part of Dot, because that musical rhythm is what is a huge part of the humor with the show. And the Minnesota nice and that kind of attitude really brings the lightness and the humor, because otherwise it's a really fucked up story, you know? And I think, especially because there was a past with Dot, and so having this moment, which we talked about it quite early on, Noah, right, with are we going to shift the accent? And I thought that was a really interesting thing to play with too, how different you feel when you suddenly lose an accent like the Minnesota one, and you do feel different. It feels immediately a little less warm, like from my perspective with Dot. And yeah, it was one that I really enjoyed, and I actually found that at night I would find it quite difficult to let go of the accent, so that it would kind of trickle out as I got into a bath, and English and Minnesotan would still be happening. But it also helps with the dialogue, you know, it's written for that kind of an accent. And when you start really figuring it out and you start learning your lines, it becomes this incredible dance that your tongue has to figure out. It's pretty awesome.
So Jon, the voice of Roy, it doesn't seem like you're doing such a different accent from your own, but is there a change to the cadence or something you're doing that's a little more
Well,
subtle?
it was definitely a decision to not do, the sort of traditional Minnesota kind of vibe. And I had many conversations as well with the dialect coach, and we thought, the South Dakota part of, and the person who lives outside, it's much less expressive in the lilt and the chipperness of it. And so, when he would just sit there and talk, and he's got everything's very, you don't want to move too much, and your mouth doesn't really have to move a lot because you don't have to do it because it's fucking cold. And save all the energy I can, and that's how it's gonna go. And there's examples of this, of these guys who just, they're no nonsense, they're right to the point, and it represents in how they speak. The same way that Jennifer was saying, the same way what Juno was saying. There's something there that, and it sets up a nice dichotomy to what we're expecting and what we're used to seeing. And it was fun, it was very fun to find that sound.
I also got the sense that there was a lot more to him than just a provincial local guy. Even when we see you with your shirt off and you've got the piercings, like, oh, this guy, something else is going on here.
He has hobbies. We all have hobbies.
Busy
Have hobbies.
yes. And we don't have them all here today, but I wanted to talk about one of the actors who so stands out from this season. That's Sam Spruell, this old monk.
Yeah.
I was rather unfamiliar with before this, but I thought he was amazing, and you all have some pretty intense scenes with him. Tell me about shaping that character with him, though.
Well, Sam, I had seen, he was in one of the installments of Small Acts, and he was just so captivating, and he was playing such an awful person, and yet there's something vulnerable about him always, and I felt like that was really important. And, God bless Sam for being willing to cut his hair like that, and, to really...
A great joke that John, as Roy gets to say, is that, what do you say, like, a dress just like...
With the
looks like
Three Stooges haircut, yeah. But, he took the project so seriously of this man who is hundreds of years old, who probably doesn't own anything. If he needs a gun, he'll find a gun. And, that process with Sam of like lighting a cigarette when Joe Keery's walking him outside, he's like, well, I wouldn't own any cigarettes, so we should find one on the ground, right? And when he comes up on the porch, he's like, I don't know that I would have a ski mask. It would be more like he found a sack and he cut eye holes in it, and so that's what we did, and that was sort of came out of this dialogue that we ran. And I think, it's even creepier that he's wearing this burlap sack over his head than just a ski mask.
Shit.
But it's, I've rarely seen, the pivotal junction for him at the very end, of that smile and the biscuit and the act of forgiveness that's in process. It's truly one of the profoundly moving actor moments that I've encountered, and it's a journey to take a guy from being that scary, to being that heartbreaking, really, and he's a tremendous talent.
The other thing I would say is Sam was so invested in getting that role. He auditioned. He went on tape. His mom was the other side of the reading, and it was an actor who put themselves out there, and we just sat there and we looked at the tape along with Rachel Tenner, who's done all the casting for all the seasons of Fargo. And put himself out there, and we were smart enough to say, that's our guy.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks for joining us for the stream.
Thank you, Juno, for staying up late in South Africa. Let me get some rest. Juno Temple, Jon Hamm, and Noah Hawley. So everybody-